Mayor Rudy Giuliani, thank you very much for joining us. You said earlier today that the Mueller investigation was bad for the country. What do you make of the findings in terms of all we know right now?
Well, what I meant by that was it turns out that this never happened. So there never should have been an investigation. I think the conclusion was good for the country. I think that they came to the conclusion definitively that there was no collusion. They came to the conclusion that they could not charge a crime with regard to obstruction. And then the Attorney General and Rod Rosenstein, the Office of Legal Counsel, because they punted it to them to make the decision, came to the decision, which I think is quite correct, that there's no element of obstruction here. And therefore, why do we have this investigation? Just to prove, I guess maybe I was in an unusual position. I was on the campaign for 4 or 5 months. I never saw anything that even gave the whiff of some kind of collusion with Russians. The president, from the very beginning, has been mystified as to how this could be.
How comfortable are you concluding that the president is not implicated, if not on the Russia collusion question, but on obstruction of justice, when we are told that Mr. Mueller said he couldn't reach a conclusion about that?
I'm not troubled at all. First of all, here's the big takeaway. There was never a reason for the investigation. There was no crime committed. They were investigating what turned out to be a non-crime. So, as the Attorney General points out in his excellent 2 paragraphs analyzing it, it's very, very hard to commit obstruction of justice when you didn't commit the crime. It's hard to prove the intent for obstruction of justice. Doesn't mean you can't, but it's very hard to do. Second, he didn't do any of the acts that traditionally are required for obstruction of justice, meaning he didn't threaten anybody. He didn't destroy evidence, as Hillary Clinton did. He did not delete emails. He turned over 1.4 million documents. He turned every message, every email, everything they asked for. There isn't a single thing they didn't get. You see no complaint about that. He didn't object to any of the witnesses. He could have. Bill Clinton did that. Bill Clinton objected to almost every witness. President Trump did not object to anyone testifying. They got everything that they asked for.
2 other quick questions, Mayor Giuliani. One is you and the president's other attorneys recommended that he not sit down for an interview with the special counsel, Robert Mueller. At one point, you called it a perjury trap.
Sure.
Do you believe that any of these conclusions would have been different, findings would be different, had the president sat down?
No, they have all the explanations that the president would have given had he sat down for an interview. The president has given them on numerous occasions by interviews, tweeting. They couldn't show us a question that they needed an answer to. So that's why I believe they only wanted him for the purpose of trapping him into perjury.
So you're saying that Mueller and his team didn't act honorably, because you said they were setting a perjury trap. You didn't walk into it.
Yeah, you're darn right they didn't act honorably. Look what they did to Manafort. They got him in solitary confinement, and they go question him every 4 days and try to get him to lie.
But is there a contradiction?
After a while, that gets close to subornation of perjury. The first four times a guy you're bringing out of solitary tells you it didn't happen the way you want me to say it. By the 5th or 6th time, you're getting pretty darn close to suborning perjury. Luckily, Manafort wouldn't lie.
So you're saying they didn't act honorably, but their conclusion is the correct one. I mean, is that a contradiction?
Not at all. They had no choice. What are they going to do? Make things up? They had no choice. There's no evidence. They can't create it. They tried darn hard to create it. So he was cleared by a biased staff because hard as they tried, however many rules they just ignored, they couldn't get what they needed because, how about this, Judy? It didn't happen. There was no collusion and there was no obstruction.
Will the president, do you think, pardon any of the people who were indicted and found guilty by Robert Mueller, whether it's Michael Flynn, Paul Manafort, anybody else?
I was asked that question by numerous reporters during the investigation. I was asked that question by some lawyers, and the answer is always the same. The president is not going to consider pardons. He's not going to give any pardons. If that happens, it has to happen in the future, and nobody has a promise of it. Nobody should assume it. But he has the power to do it, but I have no reason to believe he's going to exercise it.
Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, attorney
Thanks,
to the
Judy.
president. Thank you very much.
Thank you.